Thank you, Representative Oliverson. We talked about this before to establish legislative intent, so I have a few questions for you, please. Senate Bill 14 applies only to medical procedures and treatment provided to children in the state of Texas. Is that correct?
That's right.
And gender transitioning and gender reassignment procedures on a child occurring in another state would not be covered by the prohibition in Section 2 of the bill, correct?
That's right.
So a physician or a practitioner in another state could provide, prescribe, administer, or dispense a medication to a child in another state, and that physician or practitioner would not be subject to discipline as provided for in Section 5 of the bill, correct?
That's right. Only Texas physicians.
And it's possible that a child who was prescribed a medication in another state that would be a prohibited medication under Senate Bill 14 could travel to Texas for any number of reasons, for example, for vacation or to visit a family member. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So let's say that child who is on a medication prescribed by a physician in another state comes to Texas and finds themselves in need of medical care while they are here. Maybe they're in an accident or have acute appendicitis, and they end up being admitted to a hospital for an extended period of time. When a patient is admitted to a hospital and they are on prescription medications, when they go into the hospital, do they continue to take those medications while they are in the hospital?
Well, sometimes, Representative, it depends on the medication. In the case of blood thinning medication, if the child was going to have surgery, you would suspend those medications in order to restore a normal function to the coagulation cascade. But as a comparative example, on the opposite side of the coin, if we're talking about diabetes and a child has diabetes and takes insulin regularly, you would absolutely continue those medications during the course of treatment. So it just depends on the class of medication.
Absolutely. So there is a risk to a patient of stopping prescription medication abruptly sometimes. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And it's the doctor taking care of the patient in the hospital that has to weigh those factors in deciding whether to order the continuation of those medications in the hospital, correct?
That's right.
And that would be the medical standard of care in that case, correct, for the doctor to evaluate the risks and benefits of continuing versus discontinuing medications for a hospitalized patient, correct?
That is correct.
So if a child is admitted to a Texas hospital after Senate Bill 14 goes into effect, and then that child is taking a prescription medication for a purpose that would fall under the prohibition in Senate Bill 14 when they are admitted, that child's physician would owe a duty to that patient to evaluate the risks and benefits of continuing those medications or whether they can be discontinued safely while the child is in the hospital, correct?
That's exactly right.
And if a physician taking care of a hospitalized child determined that it would be unsafe to discontinue that medication, and the medical standard of care would dictate that the medication be continued during the hospitalization, if the physician ordered the continuation of that medication, would that physician be in violation of Senate Bill 14?
That is not the intent of Senate Bill 14. In those particular situations, again, we spent a fair amount of time discussing this on Friday, but as you know, there is that off-ramp I talked about. And so for children that are on these medications in Texas, being on those medications, in order to stop those medications, it's not something that you would do abruptly. So along the same lines and consistent with what we've said legislatively in other respects, if a child was here visiting on a certain prohibited medication, was intending to return home, I would leave it to the doctor's discretion as to whether that medication should be continued, and I would not consider that to be a violation of Senate Bill 14.
And likewise, the hospital pharmacist filling the medication order and the nurse administering it, each on the order of the physician, would not be in violation of Senate Bill 14. Is that correct?
That's right. They would all be similarly protected.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Speaker?
Ms. Howard, for what purpose?
I move that the exchange between myself and Representative Oliverson be reduced to writing and placed in the journal.
Members heard the motion. To object, the chair has done so.
Thank you.